So we're going to read chapter 15 of Hoot today. Really working through the book. Chapter 15. Roy sat cross-legged on the floor, gazing up at the cowboy poster from the Livingston Rodeo. He wished he was as brave as a champion bull rider, but he wasn't. The Mother Paula's mission was simply too risky. Somebody or something would be waiting. The attack dogs might be gone, but the company wasn't about to leave the new Pancake House location unguarded for long. And in addition to fear of getting caught, Roy had serious qualms about trying anything illegal. There was no dodging the fact that vandalism was a crime, however noble the cause. Yet he couldn't stop thinking ahead to the day when the owl dens would be destroyed by the bulldozers. He could picture the mother owls and father owls hopelessly flying in circles while their babies were being smothered under tons of dirt. It made Roy so sad and angry. What if Mother Paula's had all the proper permits? Just because something was legal didn't automatically make it right. Roy still hadn't settled the argument between his brain and his heart. Surely there had to be a way for him to help the birds, and Beatrice's stepbrother, without breaking the law. He needed to come up with a plan. Glancing out the window, Roy was reminded that time was slipping away. The shadows had lengthened, which meant that the sun would be setting soon and that Mullet Fingers would be on the move. Before leaving the house, Roy poked his head into the kitchen where his mother stood over the stove. "Where are you going?" "Bike ride." "Another one? You just got back." "When's dinner? It smells great." "Pot roast, honey, nothing special, but we won't eat until 7:30 or 8. Your dad had late tea time." "Perfect," Roy said. "Bye, Mom." "What are you up to?" she called after him. "Roy." He pedaled at full speed to the block where Dana Matherson lived and chained his bicycle to a street sign. Approaching the house on foot, he slipped unnoticed through a hedge into the backyard. Roy wasn't tall enough to see into the windows. He had to jump and hold himself up by his fingers. In the first room, he saw a thin, rumpled figure lying prone on the sofa, Dana's father, holding what appeared to be an ice pack to his forehead. In the second room was Dana's mother, or Dana himself. Was either Dana's mother or Dana himself, wearing red spandex shorts and a ratty wig. Roy decided it was probably Miss Matherson, since the person was pushing a vacuum cleaner. He lowered himself and resumed creeping through the outside wall until he reached the third window. And there, sure enough, was Dana. He lay sprawled on his bed, a lazy blob in dirty cargo pants and unlaced high-top sneakers. He wore a stereo headset and his head was jerking back and forth to the music. Standing on tiptoe, Roy tapped his knuckles against the glass. Dana didn't hear him. Roy kept tapping until a dog on the next door porch began to bark. The next time Roy lowered himself to peek into the window, Dana was glowering at him through the window. He had pulled the headset off and was mouthing some words that even an amateur lip reader could have figured out. Smiling, Roy dropped to the lawn and took 2 steps back from the Matherson house. He proceeded to do something drastically out of character for a boy who was basically shy. What he did was salute crisply, spin around, and drop his pants and bend over. Viewed upside down, which was how Roy saw it, Dana's wide-eyed reaction suggests that he had never been mooned in such a personal way. He seemed highly insulted. Calmly, Roy pulled up his trousers and then strolled to the front of the house and waited for Dana to come out of the door. It didn't take long. Roy broke into a brisk jog, with Dana no more than 20 yards behind him, cursing and sputtering vile names. Roy knew he was a faster runner, so he measured his pace. He didn't want Dana to get discouraged and give up. Yet, after only 3 blocks, it became evident that Dana was in worse shape than Roy had anticipated. Steadily, he ran out of steam, the angry curses dissolving into moans of fatigue, the name-calling into sticky wheezes. When Roy checked behind him, he saw that Dana was gimping in a lopsided half-trot. It was pathetic. They were still half a mile from where Roy needed to be, but he knew Dana wouldn't make it without pausing for a rest. The sorry load was about to keel over. Roy had no choice but to pretend he was tiring, too. Slower and slower he ran, falling back in the chase until Dana was practically stumbling at his heels. Familiar, sweaty hands clamped down on his neck, but Roy realized that Dana was too worn out to throttle him. The kid was simply trying to keep himself from falling down. It didn't work. They landed in a heap, Roy pinned on the bottom, Dana panting like a wet plow horse. "Don't hurt me, I give up," Roy peeped convincingly. Ugh. Dana's face was red as a pepper and his eyeballs were fluttering in their sockets. "You win," Roy cried. Ugh. Dana's breath was foul and his body odor was ferocious. Roy turned his head away to gulp some fresh air. Beneath, the ground was soft and the soil was black as coal. Roy guessed that they'd fallen in somebody's garden. They lay there for what seemed like a while for Dana to recover from the pursuit. Roy felt smushed and uncomfortable, but there was no use trying to squirm loose. Dana was dead weight. Eventually he stirred, tightening his hold on Roy, and said, "Now I'm going to kick your butt, Eberhardt. Please don't do that. You mooned me. It was a joke, I'm sorry. Hey, you mooned somebody, and that's it. You get your butt kicked." "I don't blame you for being mad," Roy said. Dana slugged him in the ribs, but there wasn't much muscle in the punch. "You think it's funny now, cowgirl?" Roy shook his head, faking like he was hurt. Dana grinned again. His teeth were nubby and yellow, like an old barn dog's. Kneeling on Roy's chest, he hauled back to hit him again. "Wait," Roy squeaked. "For what? Beatrice the bear ain't here to save you this time." "Ciggies," Roy said in a confidential whisper. Dana lowered his fist. "What'd you say?" "I know where there's a whole case of cigarettes. If you promise not to beat me up, I'll show you." "What kind of cigarettes?" Roy hadn't thought of that detail when he was cooking up the phony story. It hadn't occurred to him that Dana would be picky about his brand of smokes. "Gladiators," Roy said, remembering the name in a magazine advertisement. "Boulder Light. Gold." "No way!" Dana exclaimed. "Way," Roy said. Dana's expression wasn't hard to read. He was already scheming to keep some kind of cigarettes for himself and sell the rest to tidy up profits with his buddies. "Where are they?" He climbed off of Roy and ranked him to an upright sitting position. "Tell me." "First, you gotta promise not to beat me up." "Sure, man, I promise." "Ever again," Roy said, "for all time." "Yeah, whatever. I want to hear you say it." Dana laughed in a patronizing way. "All right, little cowgirl. I'll never, ever, ever pound your sorry butt ever again. Okay? I swear on my father's grave. That good enough for you?" "Your father's still alive," Roy pointed out. "I swear on Natalie's grave then. Now tell me where those gladiators are stashed. I ain't kidding." "Who's Natalie?" Roy said. "My mother's parakeet. It's the only dead person I know." "I guess that'll do." Based on what Roy had seen of the Matherson household, he had an uneasy feeling that poor Natalie hadn't expired of natural causes. "So we cool?" "Yeah," said Roy. It was time to turn the big dummy loose. The sun had dropped into the gulf and the streetlights were coming on. Roy said, "There's an empty lot in the corner of Woodbury and East Oriole." "Yeah." "In the corner of the lot, there's a construction trailer where there's a whole lot of cigarettes stashed." "Sweet, a whole case?" Dana said greedily. "But how do you know about it?" "Because me and my friends hid him there. We swiped him off a truck in the Somali Reservation." "You?" "Yeah, me." It was a fairly believable yarn, Roy thought. The Indian tribe sold tax-free tobacco products, and smokers came for miles to stock up. "Whereabouts inside the trailer?" Dana demanded. "Can't miss them. You want me to, I'll show you." Dana snorted. "No thanks, I'll find him." He placed 2 fingers in the center of Roy's chest and gave a stiff shove. Roy flopped back into the flower bed, his head coming to the rest in a soft indignation. He waited a minute or so before getting up and brushing himself off. By then, Dana Matherson was long gone. Roy would have been disappointed if he wasn't. Curley made it through Friday night, though not without personal inconvenience. First thing Saturday morning, he drove to a hardware store and bought a sturdy new seat for the toilet in the trailer, plus a dozen jumbo rat traps. He then stopped at Blockbuster and got a movie in case the TV would out again. From there, he headed home, where his wife informed him that he would need the pickup truck, since her mother was taking the other car to the bingo hall. Curley didn't like anyone else driving his pickup, so he was sulking when his wife dropped him off at the trailer. Before settling down in front of the television, Curley took out his gun and made a quick tour of the property. Nothing appeared to have been disturbed, including the survey stakes. He began to believe that his presence was indeed keeping intruders away from the construction site. Tonight would be the true test. Without the pickup truck parked near the trailer, the place would appear deserted and inviting. As he walked the fence line, Curley was pleased not to come across a single cottonmouth moccasin. That meant he could save his 5 remaining bullets for some serious security threats, though he didn't want a repeat of the nerve-rattling fiasco with the field mouse. Determining to discourage uninvited rodents, Curley carefully baited the rat traps with peanut butter and placed them at strategic locations along the walls of the trailer. Around 5 o'clock, he nuked a frozen dinner and popped a movie into the VCR. The turkey pot pie wasn't half bad, and the cherry strudel turned out to be surprisingly tasty. Curley didn't leave a crumb. Unfortunately, the movie was a disappointment. It was called The Last House on Witch Boulevard 3. One of the co-stars was none other than Kimberly Lou Dixon. A clerk at the Blockbuster had helped Curley find the film, which had been released 7 years earlier, before Kimberly Lou Dixon signed on in Mother Paula's TV commercials. Curley guessed it was her very first Hollywood role after retiring from beauty pageants. In the movie, Kimberly Lou played a pretty college cheerleader who got hexed into a witch and started boiling the star football players in a basement cauldron. Her hair was dyed fiery red for the part, and she wore a fake nose with a rubber wart on the tip of it. The acting was pretty lame and the special effects were cheesy, so Curley fast-forwarded to the end of the tape. In the final scene, the Hulk quarterback escaped from the cauldron and threw some sort of magic dust on Kimberly Lou Dixon, who turned from a witch back into a pretty cheerleader before collapsing into his arms. Then, as the quarterback was about to kiss her, she morphed into a dead iguana. Curley turned off the VCR in disgust. He decided that if he ever got to meet Kimberly Lou Dixon in person, he wouldn't mention that movie. He switched to cable and found a golf tournament, which made him drowsy. First prize was $1 million in a new Buick, but Curley couldn't keep his eyes open. When he awoke, it was dark outside. A noise had startled him from his nap, but he wasn't sure what it was. Suddenly he heard it again. Snap! Instantly a cry rang out, possibly human, but Curley wasn't sure. He muted the TV and grabbed for his gun. Something, an arm, a fist, thumbed against the aluminum side of a trailer. Then came another snap, but punctuated by another muffled profanity. Curley crept to the door and waited. His heart was thumping so hard he was afraid the intruder might hear it. As the doorknob began to jingle, Curley went into action. He lowered his shoulder, let out a Marine-style roar, and crashed out of the trailer, snapping the door off of its hinges. The intruder let out a cry as he hit the ground in a heap. Curley pinned him there with a heavy boot on his midsection. Don't move! I won't! Curley lowered the gun barrel. By the light of the trailer, he could see that the burglar was just a kid, a large, lumpy kid. He had accidentally stumbled on the rat traps, 2 of which were attached crookedly to his sneakers. That has to hurt, Curley thought. Don't shoot me, the kid cried. Aw, shut up. Curley stuck the .38 in his belt. What's your name, son? Roy Eberhardt. Well, you're in deep doo-doo, Roy. Sorry, man, please don't call the cops, Kay? The boy began to wiggle, so Curley pressed down harder with his boot. Looking across the lot, he noticed that the padlock on the gate had been broken with a heavy chunk of cinder block. You must have thought you were pretty slick, he said, sneaking in and out whenever you pleased, with your smart humor. The boy raised his head. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Roy. You're the one that yanked out all the survey stakes and put gators in the porta potties. What? You're crazy, man. Anne painted the cop car. No wonder you don't want me calling the police. Roy leaned closer. What's your problem, boy? You got a gripe with Mother Paula's? Be honest, you look like a kid who enjoys a good pancake. I do. I love pancakes. Then what's the deal, Curley said. Why are you doing all this stuff? I'd never been here before. Curley removed his boot from the kid's belly. Come on, kid, get up. The boy took his hand, but instead of letting Curley pull him to his feet, he yanked Curley to the ground. Curley managed to get one arm around the boy's neck, but he twisted free and hurled a handful of dirt into Curley's face. Just like in that stupid movie, Curley thought as he clawed miserably at his eyes, except I'm not turning into a cheerleader. He cleared the crud from his vision, just in time to see the boy run off, rat traps clattering like castanets on the toes of his shoes. Curley attempted to give a chase, but he only made it about 5 steps before tripping in an owl hole and falling flat. I'll get you, Roy, he hollered into the darkness. You're out of luck, mister. Officer Dooley had Saturday off, which was fine. It had been a hectic week, accumulating in that weird scene at the emergency room. The missing dog bite victim still had not been found or identified, though Officer Dooley now had a green shirt to match the torn sleeve he'd found at the fence of Mother Paula's construction site. The boy who had fled from the hospital must have left the shirt and the antenna on Officer Dooley's car, obviously some kind of joke. Officer Dooley was tired of being the butt of such jokes, though he was grateful for the fresh clue. It suggested that the emergency room runaway was one of Mother Paula's vandals, and that young Roy Eberhardt knew more about the case than he was admitting. Officer Dooley figured that Roy's father would get back to the bottom of the mystery, given his special background in interrogations. The policeman spent the afternoon watching baseball on television, but both Florida teams got creamed. The Devil Rays lost by 5 and the Marlins by 7. Around dinner time, he opened his refrigerator and discovered that there was nothing to eat but 3 individually wrapped slices of Kraft processed cheese. Immediately, he embarked on a trip to the mini-mart for a frozen pizza. As was his new routine, Officer Dooley made a detour towards the Mother Paula's property. He still hoped to catch the vandals, wherever they were, in the act. If that happened, the captain and the sergeant would have little choice but to take him off desk duty and put him back on patrol again, with a glowing commendation for his file. Turning his squad car onto East Oriole, Officer Dooley wondered if the trained Rottweilers were guarding the Pancake House site. In that event, it would be pointless for him to stop. Nobody would mess with those crazed dogs. In the distance, a bulky figure appeared in the middle of the road. It was advancing at an odd, halting gait. Officer Dooley braked the Crown Victoria and peered warily through the windshield. As the figure drew closer, passing through the glow of the streetlights, the policeman could see it was a husky teenage boy. The boy kept his head down and seemed to be in a hurry. Though he wasn't running in a normal way, it was more of a wobbly lurch. Each step made a sharp, clacking sound that echoed on the pavement. When the boy came into range of the squad car's headlights, Officer Blinko noticed a flat, rectangular object attached to one of his sneakers. Something very strange was going on. The police officer flipped the flashing blue lights and stepped out of his car. The surprised teenager halted and looked up. His pudgy chest was heaving and his face was slick with sweat. "Can I talk to you for a second, young man?" "Nope," answered the boy. With rat traps on his feet, he couldn't get far. Officer Blinko had no difficulty catching the boy and hustling him to a caged back seat of the police cruiser. The policeman's seldom used handcuffs were working splendidly. "Why did you run?" he asked the young prisoner. "I want a lawyer," the kid replied, stone-faced. Cute. Officer Blinko put the squad car in a U-turn so he could take the boy to the police station. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he spotted another figure hurrying up the street, waving frantically. "Now what?" thought the policeman, stepping onto the brakes. "Whoa, wait up!" shouted the approaching figure, his unmistakable bald head glinting under the streetlights. It was Leroy Brannett, a.k.a. Curley, the foreman of Mother Paula's project. He was huffing and puffing when he reached the police car and drooped warily across the hood. His face was florid and smudged with dirt. Officer Blinko leaned out the window and asked what was the matter. "You caught him!" the foreman exclaimed breathlessly. "Way to go!" "Caught who?" The policeman turned to appraise his prisoner in the back seat. "Him! The little sneak who's been messing with our place!" Curly straightened and pointed accusingly at the teenager. "He tried to bust into my trailer tonight. Lucky I didn't shoot his fool head off." Officer Blinko fought to contain his excitement. He'd actually done it. He had caught Mother Paula's vandal. "I had him pinned down and he got away," Curly was saying, "but not before I wrung out the name out of him. His name's Roy Eberhardt. Go ahead and ask him." "I don't need to," said Officer Blinko. "I know Roy Eberhardt, and that's not him." "What?" Curly was fuming, as if he had expected honesty from the young burglar. Officer Blinko said, "I assume you want to press charges?" "You bet your shiny tin badge I do. This creep tried to blind me, too. He threw dirt in my eyes." "That's an assault," Officer Blinko said. "To go along with the attempted burglary, trespassing, destruction of private property, and so forth. Don't worry, I put it all in the report." He motioned to the passenger side and told Curly to hop in. "You'll need to come down to my headquarters." "My pleasure." Curly scowled at the sullen lope in the back seat. "Want to hear how he got those ridiculous rat traps on his toes?" "Later," said Officer Blinko. "I want to hear everything." This was the big break that the policeman had been waiting for. He could hardly wait to get to the station and pry a full confession out of the teenager. From training films, Officer Blinko remembered that delicate psychology was necessary when dealing with uncooperative subjects. So in a deliberately mild voice, he said, "You know, young man, you can make this much easier on yourself." "Yeah, right," the kid muttered from the mesh partition. "You could start by telling us your real name." "Gee, I forget." Curly chuckled harshly. "Putting this one in jail is going to be fun." Officer Blinko shrugged. "Have it your way," he told the teenage prisoner. "Got nothing to say, that's cool. You're entitled under the law." The boy smiled crookedly. "What if I got a question?" "Go ahead and ask him." "All right, I will," said Dana Matherson. "Either one of you dorks got a cigarette I can bum?" So I'm going to share my screen so you can see the reading comprehension questions for this chapter. Chapter 15 questions. How did Roy get Dana to agree to never beat him up again? And 2, what happens to Dana at the end of the chapter? I want at least 3 details for that question. Thanks for reading with me today.